It's March 21st, 2024. We're here in Studio 3 at Sunset Sound, which is temporarily, maybe permanently, Snake Mountain, which Shooter Jennings has taken over this room and dubbed it that name. It's a very special day, and I'm so excited because I get to sit here with a truly authentic artist, Mr. Charley Crockett, sir. So we are in the middle of Studio 3, Snake Mountain, while you're making your record on the very last day. 8 days now you've been here?
I guess so. Feels like a lifetime. I don't mean like it's dragged on and on. I mean like I feel like I lived a life or a whole life in 10 days or something.
Yeah. Is it always imperative for you to come in a recording studio to do a record, or can you do one in a garage somewhere with a Pro Tools rig at the beginning?
I've recorded every way you can, you know, on people's iPhones, flip phones, laptop microphones, makeshift rehearsal spaces, you know, tourists, video cameras, and taking the audio off of those, put them on CDs. But these days I've really been chasing the classic studios. You know, there are not a lot of them left. And
yeah, it's a vibe. It's a focus. We were going through the tape vault, you know, for me, and from what I've learned from even other artists is, you know, there's not a pressure, but there's an inspiration for the bands, the artists, the singers that have came in here before you that you admire. And you know that they were right over there in 1982, or they were right over here and sang this part, or the drums were done for that special song. Like, that lifts you up. You don't get that anywhere else. Do you find that?
When I was playing on the street in New Orleans, the more and more that I was out there at night, you know, tricking tourists for change, the more I felt the spirit. You know, they say that, you know, a river of whiskey runs down Bourbon.
Yeah.
But it's really a river of all those kind of lost and found souls, you know, that were doing this, you know. It's like standing in the alley between the Ryman and Roberts or something. You know, Hank Williams he's walking around back there, you know.
Yeah.
When I was in Littlefield, Texas, working on this movie just a few months back, that's where Waylon Jennings was born. He's buried in Arizona. But I kept like seeing visions of him walking on the sidewalks of that town as I was driving around it in my Caballero or whatever. You know, legends never die. They're just walking around.
And that's what this show's designed about, highlighting and keeping the stories in the forefront, and also for younger artists, kids, people to learn about Van Halen or Waylon Jennings or Stevie Nicks or Bill Withers, which Bill Withers made one of the most important records, and that was called Just As I Am, and that was done here with Clarence Avant. You have such a fascination with Bill Withers. When was the first time you heard Bill Withers?
I think I must have been 4, probably 4 years old. Maybe being at a grocery store or somewhere in South Texas with my mama, hearing Lean On Me. Without a doubt, it's the first song I remember hearing. And so he was always my favorite. And actually, Mark Neal, of all people, had suggested this studio because I've only made one album in California before, and it was actually all recorded in a farmhouse in Mendocino County out there in Potter Valley when I was really kind of a farmhand, you know, and just still playing on the street and working on ranches and working in ganja and shoveling shit, you know, for horse ranchers and cowmen and shit. And so, but that record was called A Stolen Jewel. I put that out in 2015. So that's my closest thing to a legitimate California LP as I had come. And so I'd really gotten hooked on the idea of doing another one out here. And I made a couple of records with Mark in Valdosta, Georgia, kind of right around the same time. At the time I was thinking about doing a deal with Dan Arbach. Me and Dan are cool, good friends, but I decided to work with Mark. And anyways, I didn't want to go back to Georgia because I'd made a couple albums there And I really felt that if I come out here to the Western Edge, I maybe could do something different. And so he suggested Sunset, which I had never heard of. And when I looked it up, I seen that, Bill cut here just as I am or whatever. And so from that moment, I was, obsessed with getting out here. And then with Mark, the timing didn't work out or whatever. And Shooter and I had been talking about making a record together for years.
Oh, wow.
We had the same agent for years. I think he was one of the first guys I opened up for, like, on the circuit 8-9 years back. And so that was probably August of last year that we maybe penciled in some dates here with Mark Neal. And that fell apart. And I was really, I was sad about that, because I was excited and I was ready. I had all my guys called, and I just was going to come flooding in here on a hot August afternoon. And then me and Shooter was talking, and he said that he signed the lease here in Studio 3. And I was like, well, that's it then, son. We got to do this.
It's so wild how things happen like that. And also, that record that you love, the gentleman that played guitar on that whole album, Stephen Stills of Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, is in Studio 2 right now. And it's just like these things, it's the power of manifestation. It's everything happens for a reason. I don't even know where to start with you on an interview because there's so many layers and so many experiences you've went through. Do you feel like you're 80 or do you feel like you're 39? And you have a birthday in 3 days. Happy early birthday.
Oh, thanks, Drew.
Yes, sir.
Man, I was older back then. I'm younger than that now.
Do you feel more freedom mentally and just emotionally now that you've kind of accomplished these things and went through so much loss, pain, happiness, love, whatever it may be?
I do. I saw this interview, I think it might have been at Arlen, somewhere in Austin, of Stevie Ray Vaughan. And he's talking about, or the woman interviewing him is asking him about Hendrix. And you could see he's pretty well known by this point and probably getting asked to compare himself to Jimmy so frequently. You could see he's not irritated, but he's like ready for that question. And he's like, Jimmy is incomparable. He's like, maybe the only thing that he and I have in common is that Jimmy played everything he ever wanted to play on the guitar. And Stevie said, well, and I also am playing everything I want to say, I'm doing it on my guitar. I thought it was a really good way to put it. And he was like, he was like she's asking him to compare them. And he's like, well, I mean, I'm me and he's him.
Mm-hmm. I have seen that, yeah.
Right? That's the whole deal. But what I feel is that now I'm able to say what I want to say. I'm able to play what I feel like playing, and it makes me feel young because, I don't know. It's just like the Dylan thing. I'm younger than that now. But thinking about, I had no idea Stills was on that Bill shit.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I mean, not my whole life. You're the one that told me that. I didn't realize it, and it was wild when you told me they were going to be here. And actually, I was playing basketball yesterday, and Shooter was comping something down, and I was out there by myself. No one's out there, and I'm shooting that ball. And Kyle aired it up like too full, so it's like firing off the rim 30 feet in the air. And I turn around at one point after getting my own rebound to go shoot, and as I'm putting the ball up, under the hoop is this guy in a ball cap, and I'm about to shoot and look, and it was Neil Young, and luckily I knew what he looked like these days because I saw him at the Hollywood Bowl for Willie's 90th. Oh. So I recognized him immediately. He was looking at me kind of like this. I had the ball up in the air, and I was like, "Hey, Neil." He was like, "Yeah, I guess things are going pretty okay." But he had a smile on his face,
Yeah.
Kind of a smirk, and he walked off into the studio. I was like, damn.
That's wild.
My name's Charlie. No.
I mean, he's been making records here 5 decades, We have his picture, one of the first sessions out in the lobby out there with,
When did he first come in here?
I mean, there's a picture of him and Jim Messina, so it would have been like Buffalo Springfield kind of. I mean, those guys, Laurel Canyon, that Laurel Canyon sound was developed in the 60s. Studios. Yeah, and they would there was such a community back then. That's what Shooter and I and Nate Hayes and all these people are trying to do down here now. It's just like real songwriting and real musicians and bringing that LA music scene back, because it was, Lee Sklar was played on 2,500 albums, but, it'd be him, Carole King, and James Taylor, and then they'd go play on Stephen Stills' record, or they go play with David Crosby on something. And it was just, everybody was friends, and it was just about making music. And
y'all got the personalities for that, I've known Shooter a long time, but I was kind of reborn in this room with him, because it put me so much at ease. And the amount of tools in my bag that I can reach in there for kind of depends on that. I made a lot of records under a lot of pressure that's not so helpful. It's a lot. There can be a lot of ego sometimes with people trying to control a room. You know what I mean? And I never been about that. And that was the thing about Shooter, because I remember, and this is my 15th album, and I've done it every which way. I've written them all on the fly. I've gone through the trenches with the guys that want to, do the pre-production to death thing before you ever get the song started. And I assume, that since we were doing that, the Sunset thing and spending a lot of money, I figured Shooter was going to want to do pre-production. And I gave him this whole bit about, how we could do it, thinking that, it was making concessions that a LA producer would want. Yeah. And I got done with my whole bit, and he's like, "We can do that if you want, Charlie, but I'd really rather just go in there and see what you do." And I was like, He
gets it.
Oh, okay. And then from that point on, I never, my inhibitions were gone.
Yeah.
And then we just come in here, and the whole record, I mean, we really did most of it in those first 4 days. And that's how I like to do it, man. And it should be like that.
And writing in the room, too.
Yeah, writing in the room. Wrote everything. First one, I just walked right in there with Cullen and that, where the piano is, and wrote Easy Money. I had a couple of ideas on the phone that I'd come up with at the Marquee. Walked in here, and 30 minutes later, we had the keeper track. And we didn't touch that vocal at all. And then it just, one after another, they just all rolled off like that. And even the ones that maybe took a few hours to figure out, it was still easy. They were just more complex arrangements, but there was no thinking. I mean, I barely remember it.
Yeah. Well, that's a testament to Shooter, the room, the whole team here. But like, Shooter's such a kind person, and a producer's job is to get the best out of an artist. And a lot of times they're worried about themselves and how this record's going to affect their career, which then you're reducing it. You're not producing anything, you're reducing. A studio is like a hospital almost. You bring art into it, and there's a group of trained professionals that help to service your songs, and the producer's the doctor, and there's engineers that do their job. And it's just, when you think about it like that, it's pretty wild. It's this little square box we're in, but we're bringing this art that you've created in here or outside, or it's about a story that had something to do with your life or a loved one's life, or who knows. But you bring it in here, and it gets elevated through this process, and it's such a romantic thing. When I say you're an artist, I think there's singers, there's musicians, and then there's artists. An artist, everything they do is just more impactful. I think they're more sensitive, they're more in tune with things. When I listen to your music, there's a level of authenticity where I'm just obsessed about learning about the person, not just the music. I want to see what they're all about. Leonard Cohen. I hear like Leonard Cohen when I listen to you a lot. I hear the tone and sincerity of like a Nora Jones too. It's just like, it's honest. It's right into the microphone. These are stories you can tell. It's just, there's nothing like authenticity, because it just immediately conveys. So I want to get into the artist's mind. I want to learn about them. You grew up in Texas in the early 80s, correct? Mm-hmm. What were your parents like? Were they musicians? Did they turn you on to music?
I was born in 84. And I was born in San Benito, same town as Freddie Fender. It was the closest town. We lived outside of a much smaller town of Los Fresnos on a rural route out there in the middle of sugarcane and grapefruit fields.
Wow.
My mama was a cocktail waitress at the Holiday Inn on South Padre Island, and kind of interning, or I guess you say kind of volunteering. She was like working on the side at a TV station. It's called KVEO. And my daddy was pouring concrete and working on shrimp boats. I didn't have anybody doing any there's no professional music background in my family or anything. But my mama always was a great singer.
Wow.
And she sang with me as a young child, and I think I always thought that's where I got it from.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Seed was planted.
Yeah. She was always
What kind of
such
stuff?
a great singer. Everything, all the stuff on the radio in the 80s. But she loved Billie Holiday and Bill Withers, all kinds of stuff, ZZ Top down there was huge back then. They were like kind of South Texas guys. But
Your parents together?
Nobody, huh?
Your parents stayed together?
No, they didn't, My dad was around early on, but gone before I really could remember him, and then he didn't come back into my life until I was an adult. And then my mama had 2 kids by her first marriage, and then just me with my daddy. And at one point, we all lived in this single wide, 7 of us, my brother, my sister, me, my mama, my daddy, my grandmother, some friend. The Rio Grande Valley is a really special, beautiful place, but it's really poor down there. There's not a lot of economic opportunity. The culture is amazing, really vibrant, but it's really poor, really isolated. And if you're born in the Rio Grande Valley, you never really leave it, It's always in your heart. I mean, it's stayed in mine. I'm a barefoot kid in that hard caliche, in my mind. But we needed to seek an opportunity. My mama took us up to Dallas, seek an opportunity for herself and give me a better life. And it was hard. Dallas is a really fast, hard Texas town.
What age were you then? 10?
Yeah, right around there. 9, something like that.
You probably hadn't even been to a big city like that before? Or? So this is a whole shocking experience kind of going to this. And then you're switching schools?
Yeah, it's just a hard place, Dallas is a blues city, like New Orleans or Memphis, I think it was Leroy Jones, Miri Baraka, wrote that book, Blues People, and he said that the true blues triangle was New Orleans, Memphis, Dallas. Mm-hmm. And Dallas I always thought was like, Memphis and New Orleans, because of the kind of lack of diversified economy in those towns, always for better or worse, for the tourism dollars, always really projected its music culture as, one of the main reasons to visit the town, right? I mean, New Orleans is known for its tourism, and one of the number one draws is the music, 100%. That and the bourbon, the whiskey.
Was Taj Mahal from Dallas?
That's a good question.
They're from Texas.
He a Texan?
The Delta Blues.
Maybe so. Maybe he is a Texan. I know he's New Orleans associated, but yeah was he a Texas guy?
Yeah.
One more in the belt. I'll take it.
You wrote with Dan Auerbach too, didn't you? Write a song with him?
Yeah, she had a few actually. I don't know what he did with the other ones.
Yeah. They were just in this room working with Beck down the
Dan was?
Yeah. The Black Keys and Dan the Automator and Beck. They were here a couple of weeks, I think.
Oh, that's cool.
That stuff they just released all done here.
I think I wrote, I don't really remember because it's been years, but we wrote damn near a whole record in like 2 or 3 days in that kitchen that's his Easy Eye Sound. And I only ended up, he was trying to put me on a payroll. He didn't get me. He's still trying though. He might, but he probably won't. No, but I took my favorite song that he and I wrote together and put it on this album called Welcome to Hard Times. It's called Don't Cry. It's a damn good one.
Love it.
Dan's a good writer. Dan's good at everything.
Yes.
And he's just, what I'd like to say about him is that he's also a serious artist. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He's a real artist.
He curates what he wants around him very well.
Yeah, yeah. He works fast too. I do enjoy working with him. Yeah. I like working with people that, are inspired and just move, You know, back when I was, you know, through hard luck and circumstances, I ended up, you know, on the street playing. And for all my blind spots or my kind of weaknesses, you know, one thing was I never stopped and like questioned whether or not I was good enough to be doing it. You know what I mean?
Wow.
That's the thing, which is something, you know, that I carry with me is, you know.
No imposter syndrome ever or anything like that? That's what I hear all the time from artists is like, I just, you know, I always felt like I was faking it.
No.
My stories weren't real or
No, I never fake
good
shit.
enough. Yeah.
No. Everything they read about me is true and a lot more than that, you know?
Yeah.
Really, you know?
What do you carry with you?
Oh, can't show you that.
Oh, okay.
No.
But
I did get this back though, man. I was filming in Mendocino County before we came down here. I'd had this ring for a bunch of years. This guy in Arizona made for me.
Kyle?
My logo is kind of built off that now. And I lost it on this street or on this road way out in the mountains up there. And he mailed me another one to the hotel just yesterday.
Oh, I thought Kyle would have brought it down. Who I love, Kyle Madrigal, right?
Yeah.
That's your buddy for a long time now.
We made Stolen Jewel together. We were
Incredible.
both just farmhands when we met. Shit, I was sleeping in people's pastures and vineyards and shit at the time that I met him. They were playing at this little festival in the county, and I was hoboing around with this other guy that had been playing on subway cars in New York City with, you know, and I'd always move around a lot. You know, I never stayed in any town for more than a few months at a time. New York, New Orleans, San Francisco, Colorado, Texas, Northern California. And we were out there I guess it was late spring, early summer. And he had a band. They're still probably the most popular band out of that county called the Dirt Floor Band. And they were playing at this place called the Solar Living Institute right outside of Hopland. And one thing I used to do back then when I was still a true transient hoboing was one way I'd get up on stage, could talk people into letting me up on stage, was I would always agree or ask to just play their break, you know? And if they would say, oh, no, man, we don't want you plugged in or whatever, like, I don't need to be plugged in, you know? Let me just stand up here like while you're on break, you know, at coffee shops, little bars, festivals, whatever. When I approached that band as they were taking their set break that day, most of them just blew me off because I looked crazy, and I was. And but Kyle had a, like, you know, glimmer in his eye. And so we saw that same glimmer. And he was like, no, I like this guy. Come on, you plug in, use this.
Wow.
You know? And that's when I first met him. And then a couple years later, we started working for the same farmer, working ganja, you know, working in vineyards, working just all kind of manual labor stuff for all the different farmers and ranchers out there. And short story long, we ended up, after getting to know each other and playing in a lot of those rural bars around there and stuff, we ended up making a Stolen Jewel. I remember I paid him in £2. Mm-hmm. You know, it was still worth a good amount of money back then. I paid him in £2 that I got from the harvest. We recorded the whole thing on a 4-track in the middle of the winter in this farmhouse while that farmer who was finally starting to make money was, I don't know where the hell, it was like in Bali or something for the winter, which was the only way we'd have ever made that record happen, you know.
Wow. See, that's another thing. The pieces just fall together.
I was handing that album out on the street, man.
What if he hadn't let you, you know, come up on stage that night? That one moment kind of sets so many things in motion.
Yeah, it's like, imagine if Woody Guthrie, you know, had never decided to hop trains with Leadbelly and capture and write all them songs. Maybe there wouldn't be no Bob Dylan. And you just think about how Woody Guthrie and Bob changed the direction of the entire enchilada.
Yeah. Did you ever want
or Clarence Avant not doing the deal with Bill? I mean, that you talk about, as you know better than me, I mean, that's another just unbelievably, you know, unlikely
roll of the dice
scenario, you know, like you were always saying. I mean, he was much older. And I think the way I'd heard the story, right, was the first time he walked in, Bill Withers, for the session that they were going to cut on him, like, he thought they were hiring a professional singer
to
sing his songs, you know, and after waiting around a minute, he's looking at them. He's like, where's the singer? And they're like, we thought you were singing it, Bill. You know, and I can just imagine him with a piece of paper in his hand, you know, like ready to try to direct somebody. He's like,
he's so
get in the booth. or what was it? This one over here? Is it
Studio 2?
2.
Yeah,
man.
You know, you have a lot of similarities with Bill Withers and your relationship with record labels. You know, Bill walked away from the record business in 1985. He had enough because he didn't want to be controlled. His sound was his sound. He was an artist. And you've had similar experiences where labels have tried to mold you into something that is not Charley Crockett. Am I right?
I remember one time when I got discovered with a group called the Train Robbers. It was just a kind of clever name for a loose collective of guys, you know, panhandling on subway cars in New York City. So we called it Train Robbers, you know, and we would do these little, like I started out playing on the platform. And when you playing on platforms in New York City, you're meeting all kinds of characters, all kinds of people, guitar players, people playing all kinds of string instruments, tap dancers, you know, jazz soloists, just every kind of person that figures out these one-man band or these kind of street group combos to make money and stuff. Select blends, these older guys that were all these really great kind of Temptation style a cappella singers that played in the trains and stuff. And I met this young rapper when I was playing on the platform of the G train in Brooklyn, Metropolitan Avenue stop. And over the course of months, he'd be getting off the train. And like when he was I didn't really realize what he was doing. He was with this guitar player who went by the name of Ghost, who actually these guys eventually introduced me to Clarence Greenwood, Citizen Cope.
Oh, wow.
Ghost was like part of his street team and stuff. They would sit in with me while they were like waiting on the next train, train to come by. And like J-Don would rap and Ghost would take leads over like my Bill Withers kind of acoustic-y shit. And J-Don Woodard is his name. And he kept trying to, recruit me to get on the trains with him, you know? And it was I didn't really understand what he was doing. I kept blowing him off. I didn't even have a phone or anything back then, neither did he. You know, it was one of those things where it's like you just run into each other, you know, on a subway platform. Well, one day I'm riding on that G train and I'm sitting there and I'm looking across the down to the end of the car there and I see J-Don, young J-Don. He was like 18 at the time. And he's like coming toward me and I realize he's like handing out demos to people. And then as he gets closer, I realize like Ghost is behind him playing guitar. And J-Don's actually freestyling. He's rapping. I just couldn't really hear him from the other side of the car. He gets over near me and gives me a demo. And he was like, when you gonna get this money with me, you know? And then like got off the car. I was like, what is this guy doing, you know? And then like, I still didn't really understand what it was. And then one day he got off that train car. Ghost wasn't with him. This other guy we used to both run with, this guy named Ziggy wasn't with him either. This crazy motherfucker. He was like Raiden or something with like a speaker on his back. It's like Black Raiden, man. He was wild, cool dude. Anyway, he was like, come on the train with me right now. And I'm like, nah, man, I was nervous. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I was a hardcore street dude, but it's a threshold you step over. If you take the leap to play in subway cars, it is a true metamorphosis. I didn't realize it at the time. Later I did. Later I realized, you know, that I'd been on the street for years at that time. But when I stepped into the train car with him, like any inhibition, any fear, it like very quickly melted away.
How so? Because
winning over diverse audiences of New Yorkers and subway cars, man, they ain't nothing to fuck with. People are commuting.
Yeah.
They got heavy things on their mind. They're distracted by the technology in their hand, you know? But it was different time. This was like 2010, 2011, 2012. The iPhone was not completely universal yet. So a lot of people, it was still an era where everybody had iPods and shit, but it wasn't the true domination of the smartphone. Not quite yet. I think the culture was in some kind of transition, but they were still really hard to get to. People were compartmentalized, insulated. They got a lot of shit going on. It's not legal and there's like 15 ways it's illegal to be doing that shit. And the very first time we started doing it, it's like J-Don's freestyling. I'm playing my Bill Withers shit, Texas, Louisiana thing. I mean, it worked immediately because the people that didn't like what he was doing liked what I was doing. The people that didn't fuck with me, fucked with him.
Yeah.
You know? And I remember just riding down to maybe Bedford Nostrand. We made like $30 or $40. Like, I mean, in like, I don't know, 15 minutes. You know, it was taking me all day to get that $40. Yeah. And I've been doing it for years, you know? Yeah. And I remember we come up out of the subway. There's this Chinese restaurant. And like, he poured the money out on the table and we're like counting it up, you know? And it like split it right down the middle. And I was like, God damn, I just made $20 in fucking 12 minutes. And he was like, you ready to do this again? I'm like, are the Kennedys gun shy? You know, let's go. Kennedy's my favorite, by the way. And dead Kennedys, you know. Yeah. And then we went back down there, man, and that's when, I mean, it really did change for me because me and Jay, man, we could make $300 in a day, just the two of us, maybe each, just at the two-piece. So when I started expanding it with him to like, because he came from like the young spoken word poetry scene, and these were a lot of displaced teenagers from all over America. Like Jay was from Vallejo, you know, and his story was that like his mama moved to Philadelphia, back to Philadelphia where she was from or whatever. And by age 15, he's out there fucking spitting spoken word in subway cars in Philly at 15.
Wow.
Philly, you know, that ain't even New York. Philly makes New York look easy, you know? Uh-huh. And then he, you know, starts riding the train up into New York City. And he's getting hooked up with the New Eurekans and that whole deal. And so it's like, man, there were like 10 different spoken word poets that'd be coming through depending on who could ride the train that day. Different guitarists, fiddle players. There's a Brazilian fiddle player, man. This dude, I forgot, I didn't remember his name. He was so good. There's videos of all this shit, you know? And most of those guys was a lot better than me at the time. But then we were doing it 8 to 10 hours a day, every day. And sometimes you make like $1,500.
Oh, good Lord.
And you know, you're splitting it up, but that's a lot of money, man.
It's
a lot of money.
A lot more than McDonald's paying you.
Yeah, not to mention back then you wasn't paying no agent, wasn't paying no business manager, wasn't paying no manager. You know, didn't have 45 people working for you. You know, just made $1,500, cut it up, go out and spend it.
That was a pivotal point for you though, because you got a record contract.
Right up at them subway cars.
Yeah.
I guess that's where I was going with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that first deal, Nell Mulderry was who discovered us. Husband, Rob Santos, and Big Timers, you know, on the R train. And she was sitting in a subway car, and we were just turning them over. Boy, we had them by that point. I think at that time, we were doing this Jelly Roll Morton song I'd learned on the street called Dr. Jazz. It's a dope number. And I had learned that on the street in New Orleans with a mess of other New Orleans traditional stuff. A lot of old Creole jazz. All that stuff I'm talking about stuff that Jelly Roll and, you know, King Ori and all those guys are doing in the teens that's like, you know, provocative, you know, and maybe even more relevant now than it was even back then. You know, we were doing St. James Infirmary. You know, the Louis Armstrong version that's simplified and it's like gangster shit.
Wow.
You know? And we were chopping that up into like, it was a mixture of gypsy jazz and hip hop and New Orleans trumpet and shit in them train cars. And that's what this woman saw.
Killer.
And what she saw two things. She saw believability because she saw New Yorkers of all stripes into it.
Yeah, reacting
putting cash in the bag, right? And the other thing that she was hoping for, I don't say it negatively, it's just is what it is. She saw young, desperate men. And in that sense, that's where the desire for moldability came from. Mm-hmm. What I respect about her, though, is a month into the deal, being up in her offices and shit, you know, all I wanted to talk to her about was Bill Withers. You know, I'd be like, man, I want to do it like Bill. And she'd be like, there is no Bill Withers. There's only Charley Crockett. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? But what it was is they had a model. And eventually she put her hands on the desk and she was like, it's a Coke and Pepsi world, Charley. And I fucking need moldability. At least she said it. Yeah. Because they don't always say it. And I was only stuck in like a 2-year thing that I ended up waiting out, but it didn't end up being that big a deal. And I'm still eating off the plate. I mean, she taught me a lifetime of shit. Yeah. Really quick. The whole thing fell apart in 8 weeks. Which Citizen Cope said, Clarence said it would. He was like, sign my deal. Which maybe would have been a good idea because he was around guys like Scott Free, Matty C. They were around us on the street in the village. Wow. And they were the ones looking at us being like, y'all don't need anything. All we got to do is show the world what you have done to survive on the street in America. We'll see it. They'll get it. And it makes sense. I didn't know who they were at the time, but Scott Free and them, I mean, these guys A&R'd Wu-Tang. Mm-hmm. And a long line of guys, Biggie, So it's interesting because Clarence and Matty C, Scott Free, all these guys, they saw us for what we were. But then the people that saw us in the R train way up there in the canopies had a existing model, they want to plug it into. And that's where immediately it's like you're in these focus groups and they're showing you everything from Odd Future to Gym Class Heroes to the band and looking at how to mash you up and wear this and do that. And this is going to be what you do and this is going to be what you do. And another big lesson I learned from there is I never was going to I was never going to be in some democratic situation with a band again. I'm just saying that with all honesty because I got reduced to just my opinion being thrown in a hat, them shaking it up, going away and deciding, And so from then on, it was Charley Crockett forever, just because I wasn't going to get made like that.
I love that. Charley Crockett forever. What did you learn from busking, one? But two, did you ever just want to quit and say, all right, fuck this. I love music, but I'll play it. I'm going to go get a job at Old Navy or some shit or work at a restaurant or do anything that I can just have some stability in and do the kind of standard lifestyle now? Or were you just a true artist is going to play music on the Santa Monica Pier or at Madison Square Garden every single day?
Santa Monica Pier, make money out there too.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Good money on that pier.
Yeah. I mean, John Baptiste, great busker.
Anthony Farrell, that dude that was in here playing with us, playing all the keys. Yeah. He started out playing on that pier as a child, playing piano at 4 years old. And it was his mama and daddy taking him out there.
Years and years of you playing out on the streets and all the people just passing you by, maybe not even paying attention, but you're in your thoughts. What did you discover about yourself as an artist through all that?
Well, like what you said, of course I thought about putting it down and picking up a shovel. Of course I did. But, every time I went to do that, some elder would tell me just what I needed to hear. Something along the lines of, just remember, son, you can do what they do, but they can't do what you do. That kind of shit. Just when I needed it the whole way. I always thought about putting it down. That's why I was working on farms. I worked on farms coast to coast. And one of the main reasons was the street just sucks so much out of you. You can't stay out there. At some point I realized that almost everybody else that was playing on the street around us was hooked on something. There's a lot of misery. There's a lot of addiction. There's a lot of struggle out there. And the street catches up. It just does, Which is one of the reasons that I probably was desperate enough to I thought maybe that deal, that Sony deal or whatever you want to call it.
In New York.
Like a parachute, but it wasn't, I thought it was the end of the street struggle. It was the beginning. But what it did teach me is when on the other side of it, when it fell apart, I think I was 26, 27 and had been doing the street thing for several years. And I realized because of that, that I needed to get off the street or it would kill me. Or I would eventually lose, I wouldn't be able to see the forest for the trees if I kept going any further into it. And that's why I pulled away and went back to California. And then I got deeper into that ganja hustle. But one of the reasons that I was so drawn to it, number one, there was money to be made. Not number one. Number one was like working with my hands in the mountains, in fertile, agricultural valleys. I have always found that to be deeply satisfying. Just moving dirt all day feels good.
Yeah.
For me, there is something in that life that this life does not afford us.
Oh, nature is so restorative.
I think about it all the damn time.
Yeah, I live an hour away from here just so I can live by nature. I could never live up in Hollywood. Yeah. It's worth the drive every day. Did you feel alone through that period? I don't really know my parents. My father died. I've kind of moved around, not as much as you, but, some people are a lone wolf. And when you said Charley Crockett forever, you have friends, you have people, you have bandmates, you have stuff, but you're a lone wolf in your thinking and your business and your lifestyle. Is that how you kind of have always been, or how you felt?
They used to call me the coyote. El coyote. But Alexis says maybe I'm turning into a wolf.
I love it.
And
yeah. You had to feel
the whole ecosystem gets off if there's not enough wolves. That's why they're reintroducing them in places that they were, what's the word? Not extinct, but expatriated or whatever. One of the reasons that they're reintroducing them is because they find that like the whole ecosystem, the whole circle of life is broken when the wolf isn't there. And I've got this place, me and my gal, way up in the Southern Rockies. And last time I was there, it was snowing really hard. And this little property, we've got a few acres. It backs up to national forest there in the Sangre de Cristos. And I remember this hard blizzard. And there's a rancher that lives next to us, Tauseños, lived in the area his whole life. Really amazing rancher. He hunted elk as a young man with bow and arrow in those mountains. And he's in his 70s now. Wow. His health is failing him. But we become really good friends, and I go over to his house. We're neighbors, and sit in there and make music with him. Dennis Alonia. He always has this line. He's like, "How's it going out there in the music business?" And I was like, "Man, it's always hard." And he always says, "No se mande sola." And I'm like, "What the hell does that mean, Dennis?" And he says, "It don't boss itself. You got to get your ass out there." And we're sitting there and smoking weed and playing music. And he has this dog, this big dog. He's young, but it's like epileptic, and it needs these shots and shit. Chuco's the dog's name. And sometimes he has fits and disappears, and the doors are open, and we were like zoned out for an hour or two playing music. We come out of it, and he's looking around. He's like, "Where's Chuco?" And I'm like, "Oh shit." So we're looking all around the house for this dog. And like he goes in his bedroom, and he's like, starts yelling my name. He's like, "Charley, Charley." And I come running in there thinking something's wrong. And he's looking out the window, and there's this big wolf in the driveway in the blizzard, right? And we're looking at it, and like, I look at him, we look at each other, and we're like, "Holy shit, is that really?" Look back, and he's gone, But it was definitely like a American wolf, like,
yeah,
prettiest thing, man. Like, you see them for 1 second, and then they're gone,
Have you ever thought about writing a book? Because, we don't have time now, but you've done stuff in Europe. You are a successful artist now. You've been all over. You've had such pain. I've been in jail numerous times. You've done some time in jail. Growing weed up in Mendocino County, all these different things. You're into spaghetti westerns. You spent time in Morocco. Now you're here at Sunset Sound or Snake Mountain Studio 3 making a record with the amazing producer Shooter Jennings and his team. I just think that's so compelling and interesting. Like, it also would help young artists, kind of like the determination you had and the resilience that you went through all this shit. Do you believe in God?
I believe in the Creator.
Yeah,
absolutely. Creator to me it's the thread that binds life together, and you can see it everywhere. I'm very spiritual. I get weary of the institutions. Whether it's religious institutions or record executives.
How does the creator help in your life, in your art, daily, weekly, or even during records?
There's a saying in New Mexico that you're never alone because the ancestors are watching you from the mountains, you know, while you live your life down in the valley. You're never alone because they're there in the mountains watching you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's brought me a lot of comfort, you know, and I don't think that there's such thing as an end. I'm sure there's not.
I totally agree.
You know? And I'm okay. I'm okay with when that time comes and wherever it goes, you know. I'll be ready for it.
What do you think the purpose of life is? Why we're here on this planet? To be happy? To be very successful? To do whatever we want?
You just said it right in front of it. Life is about purpose. It's just that simple. There are forces that work really hard to remove the sense of purpose from our lives. And usually it's just as simple as, you know, getting you to spend $1 this way or that. Mm-hmm. But, you know, fulfillment in life to me is a sense of purpose, you know? And I think the Creator has afforded me this many years on earth so far because for, you know, all of the mistakes that I've made, I've never intentionally tried to hurt anyone, you know? Though, as Tom T. Hall says, there's a few people I can't look in the eye. Music makes me feel like I have a worthwhile purpose in the short time that I walk the earth. So in that way, I feel like I've been able to get away with it this long, you know?
Yeah.
And I have a woman who loves me, and I'm sure that I would not be as good a man without that.
No better feeling than that.
Man.
Security of a woman. Having a purpose, though, people that say, you know, oh, if I won the lottery, I'd go move down to Miami and live on a beach. Like, you'd be bored of that in a month. Mm-hmm. Like, you need to wake up and have a purpose every day. Something. It could even be a workout regimen or learning piano or whatever it is. You have to have something in your life because that human reward system that we get, even when you finish this record, you know, no matter how it does, how many units, whatever, it's the completion of it, knowing you got these songs out in this period of time. Shooter's whole thing was like, I want to go in Studio 3 for 1 year, and these are the records I made in this time frame. You know, I made these 10 albums in 2024 in Sunset Studio 3. When he said that, I was like, I'm going to do everything I can to facilitate that for him and help this, because it's the purpose of that. You know?
I'm glad to have a little something to do with that. Just a little something.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, not only just that, 65 years of artistry at this studio. Your name's right next to Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Yeah, I just want you to put my tapes up there next to Bill's. That's all I want.
You and Bill have
that's the favor I'm
shelf
asking
together.
You. Right.
I will send you a picture of that.
We looked for him hard the other day, didn't we?
Yes.
He eluded us thus far.
It's magical that even exists, or this place exists still in 2024. It
sure is. I couldn't believe it. I was naive. I didn't know it was here. Well, one look, I was hooked.
There was one story I wanted to touch down on. There's a woman that was very pivotal in your life named Audrey. And she had given you some money when she passed away that kind of changed the trajectory of where you were in life. Who was Audrey?
Been talking to Kyle, ain't you?
I don't know.
Audrey Farrell, yeah. She was a woman that I worked for a time in Mendocino County. And she would take us to blues clubs around Lake County, Mendocino County, and drive down to the Bay. And she had moved out to California in the early 70s. She was kind of part of that whole Back to the Lander movement. Kind of, that was a rebellion, I guess, maybe against the machine of the 60s, you know, Vietnam and all that, you know, Masters of Worship. And those Back to the Landers were about getting back to the land and unplugging from consumerism or whatever. And so they called all those old timers back to Landers. But she was a good time and woman when it come to music. And she was really one of the early instrumental people in the county putting on shows for kind of national acts. And, Mendocino County's off the radar. It still is, but back then it really was. So she was kind of a informal kind of promoter, kind of organizer. And she would get a lot of big blues and jazz acts and stuff, and like raise money through the community, and they would put shows on at the Grange halls or out on these people's ranches in the 70s. And so just a really avid lifetime supporter of music. And she knew I was playing in the bars, shoveling this hand, guitar in this one. And we became close as I was working for her and other old timers around her. And in the time that I knew her, she contracted Lou Gehrig's disease and died and it took her pretty rapidly.
Wow.
This very, very strong woman that was could backpack up in the Trinities, for weeks on end alone, when I met her. And then she got Lou Gehrig's ALS. And I watched the way that it took one of the strongest people I'd ever seen. Took her life quickly. But even the way that she went out, she controlled her own destiny the way she went out. I remember she died on the 4th of July, And I had gotten busted in Virginia and, I'd been gone to jail and, I had gotten out and kind of that whole green rush was over for me and kind of everybody else too, shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
Fell on hard times, that easy come, easy go. The money dries up quick. And it did, and all of a sudden, I was over here on spending sprees and my money was gone when I got to the end of making that record. Actually, if had I not gotten busted, I'm sure I wouldn't have made Stolen Jewel. I probably would have just kept going and gotten in a whole lot more trouble than I did, I'm lucky.
Serious time.
Yeah, like my brother, and so getting busted made me take recording more serious, and even the recording process itself helped me in dealing with the correction system in Virginia long term, and the fact that they saw that I had something else that I was doing, and I wasn't just paying them lip service and wasn't going to just get right back into it, relapse. And she saw that too, and I was dealing with some other situations in my life, relationship wise and shit. And she gave me $3,000 in cash, and she was like, go get that album printed up.
Wow.
I believe in you. It's gonna work. As she was dying. And so I dedicated the record to her. I think about her all the time. And I printed up 5,000 of those motherfuckers in San Francisco at some CD duplication shop downtown there. And I drove back down to Texas because as being a Texan, I knew I needed to go right back down to the center of it to make this thing work. And I started handing out those CDs, shrink wrapped, at Deep Ellum, Fort Worth, Austin, Texas. And that's when it really started blossoming.
Wow.
And that was record number 1. Now we're on 15, and it was in an 8 or 9 year period, There's
little angels that have popped in your life at certain points.
My mama always told me growing up, over and over, she'd say, son, people miss the little miracles in life looking for the burning bush. Wow. She said to me over and over. If I called her right now and you gave her 20 minutes, she'd say it. Gave her 10 minutes and she'd say it.
You were meant to do this, though. Yeah, I love it. It's just, learning about someone rather than saying, what's your favorite Willie Nelson song? I want to learn about an artist. And I'm such a fan. And I know this record's going to be incredible. I won't take up too much of your time. I just want to touch down on songwriting.
We'll fuck him up with this one.
I know. I got to hear some of it before you take off tomorrow morning. You fly out tomorrow?
Yeah.
What are you going to do for your birthday? Hang with your lady?
I might even think about it. Just, make sure I spend time with my gal.
How many times have you been in love? I'm 40, and I've been in love one time.
Man, I thought I was in love when I was younger, but none of it.
Exactly.
But it wasn't. You know why? Because there was never trust. I don't think it's love if it's not trust.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you can't trust somebody, it's probably not love.
And when you'll do anything for somebody that sometimes you wouldn't even do for yourself, but you'll put all of their needs, all of their feelings in front of yours. You die for that person.
I always hear it's easy to have unconditional love for your children, but it's unconditional love with a partner is
scary.
More, scarier, more elusive. I love this gal, Taylor Grace.
You met her at Dantana's. Our first date was at Dantana's.
Yeah, I met her in Antone's.
Oh, no shit. Yeah. Down in Austin.
Yeah. Met her at Antone's. First date was at Dantana's. And I was staying over at the Chamberlain. I had never even heard of the Sunset Marquee, let alone this place.
Yeah.
That's why I was walking around, it's like midnight cowboy LA. They were like, world's bigger than Texas, son. Come on in. Like you get yourself in a bad record deal in the bar at the Marquee real quick.
Wow.
But yeah, we went to
So true.
We went to Dantana's. It was our first date. I think I'm going back there tonight, but I was trying to get a publishing deal done, and they had me come out here, and then like blew me off the whole time I was here. But I was glad, because I was getting to know West LA, just walking up and down Sunset, Santa Monica, lighting up a J, in the alley behind the Troubadour, which I'd played once, which is where the phone started ringing. The phone started ringing with people calling from LA. When I put The Valley out, this record, The Valley, and then I went and played a Sunday night show at the Troubadour. It was a sleeper show that sold out. I don't think people were expecting. And boy, them LA folks started calling, and haven't stopped ever since.
Oh, wow. What's that feel like as an artist when, I write songs, but I don't put them out. I don't perform them. Yeah. Kyle, when he came in the other day, we had been in there 6 hours trying to finish one song. Kyle came in with his magic, your friend, and within maybe 40 minutes, we had two just incredible songs that were so...
He's a great collaborator.
Yeah, just the energy. And the one idea of a B7 chord was like... And, some smiles. Yeah. And it's just this artist, the songwriter, it's incredible. Jesse Chambers. She was like, can he come back?
He probably can.
I said, I need to manage you, Kyle. And we can.
I hope y'all work that out. He's just up the road. He likes that. That Santa Rosa Burbank flight is nice and easy. That's a good flight.
Is that the airport that's closest to Mendocino?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never been north of San Francisco or Napa.
Oh, man, you should go up there with him.
May 1st, I'm going to be up there.
I think you'd enjoy that.
Yeah.
That's a really, really special place. You should go up there and see him.
You need that restorative nature after you're in Hollywood every single day.
He's got it.
Where did you meet her at, though, your lady?
So I was playing. It was my first show at Antone's. And it was like a week before I had heart surgery, or maybe a month before I had heart surgery. I had open heart, congenital thing. And she was working for, Jamie Wyatt? Shooter made a record on her. I'd known Jamie for years, but she was working for Jamie at the time.
Oh, wow.
Jamie was opening. And that was the first time I ever laid eyes on her. And then I would run into her I played with Jamie a lot back then, so then I'd see her with Jamie at Copeland Dance Hall, White Horse, Seaboys. And yeah, by the time I run into her, I don't know, maybe the fifth time I run into her at White Horse or something, it was like New Year's Day. It was love at first sight, like once we really talked, it was over. She was like, I got this song I want to show you, but I need you to come out on the patio. And I think she was just like dying to light up a smoke, but she had these lines for this song. It was like,
she's an artist too. She's a writer.
Oh yeah. She surprise released her first record on Valentine's Day.
That's incredible.
She's got that under promise, over deliver shit down. Don't tell people what you're doing, just do it. She's got that down.
That's the strongest thing people have. I say that to artists all the time. The greatest thing you have is mystery. You know, even in marketing, always keep them wanting more.
Nothing is revealed. Let them figure it out. It's all in the songs.
Yeah. Do you write together with her?
Yeah. She helped write on this.
Oh, wow. It's a beautiful
She's
thing.
we've written all kinds of songs together. She's cutting right now, actually, a bunch of Cindy Walker songs. Some really, really good stuff, actually.
Just to touch down on songwriting for a little bit. You write, Prince worked in this room. His bed, actually, Prince had a bed in this room. Was right where we were sitting for, a couple years under a decade.
That's really cool, man.
But his thing was he moved quick. He would dream a song, come in, write it, record it, mix it, same day, done.
Yeah.
On to the next one. But he would say, if the groove is there, nothing else matters. In today's kind of songwriting climate and on Billboard and stuff, it's a very long process. It's a business element to it. Prince was just...
They've partied it out pretty good these days.
Yeah. How do you write songs? Do you sit down at a guitar and come up with some kind of chord structure and then write a melody on top of that? Or do you have a melody in your head that you write the music to? Or is it always different?
It's always different. I hear a lot of people have trouble writing on the road, and it's the opposite for me. I write constantly if I'm in transition, and I'm always on the road. I live in Austin. I really just send money there.
Yeah,
I live on the road, and I don't have any trouble writing. The reason that I book so many sessions is that's the only way I can finish a song. I don't have any trouble getting started. The trouble's finishing them without a deadline. And nothing, gets that dough to rise like booking Sunset with Shooter, not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And, throwing them raises down.
I love it.
And, finding out who's, if you're going to get any of it back. So, and then when I'm home, I don't know, man. I just never had any trouble writing, to be honest with you. Not really. But I'm trying not to be too precious with it from the standpoint of finish a song, and if it ain't the one, the next one might be.
Love that.
The two things that I try to think about is it painting a portrait that I can see the colors? Can I smell that thing? And is it telling a story? It's about storytelling to me. I don't think I'll ever be satisfied with my writing. I just want to tell good stories. I just want to tell good stories.
That's what I love. Like artists like you, even Citizen Cope, Jeff Tweedy.
Yeah, man.
Leonard
I don't
Cohen.
think Clarence gets the credit for the storytelling.
He's incredible.
He's a great storyteller. He grew up a bit in Texas. I believe he lived in Big Spring as a kid. He moved around a lot, but I'm pretty sure he lived in Big Spring.
Yeah, he was just in here with Shooter a week.
Man, I saw one of his guitar picks. I was going to steal it if it's still there.
His vocal tone, everything about him. I love him as
He's
an
a big
artist.
influence on me. I didn't say that to you. And I know Gary feels the same way about Cope.
Yeah,
he was doing it. I had heard that he was in the DC underground in the early 90s, right? Like Basshead and shit.
Yeah.
Right?
That's where I only know him from that.
And then he's done it all. And then he got the crazy big record deal and they tried to fence him in and he wasn't having it. Mm-hmm. And he broke past them.
He had that song, A Bullet and a Target, that kind of broke him.
That is a
heater.
See what you done here. Just put yourself between a bullet and a target.
Oh my gosh. If you covered that, that would be amazing.
You're blowing yourself.
All those songs. He has that song with Santana. That was massive too. Sideways.
I think that Bullet and the Target, man, I don't know, because what year did that come out, you think? It's been a while.
2009 probably. Maybe.
Was it that?
Yeah, it was in the movie Alpha Dog. That's where it really kind of was breaking.
It was an Alpha Dog?
Yeah, with Justin Timberlake and Emile Hirsch.
Yeah.
It's just a crazy-ass movie.
Man, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a true story.
Alpha Dog?
Yeah.
Ooh, that one's hard for me to watch.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's dark.
You ever see a movie called Bully?
Oh, I think that's even darker.
That's way darker.
Those are the kind of movies you see once.
Yeah.
I can't watch that shit ever again. Good shit. Very good, though. Don't get me wrong.
It's Kevin Clark who did Kids. Another incredible, gritty film, which broke a lot of young actors.
I have a hard time watching dark shit, but then people say I write pretty dark.
I don't know. I'm like Bill Withers, though. I'm listening to the words. You know, some artists are just listening to the groove, and I don't even know what the fuck they're saying, but I still love it. But with you, I'm listening to very intently to the story. And
Bill said a lot.
oh,
Man, a lot more than people realized. With that smooth voice, he's getting a lot by you. You know, they say if you can't get away with saying it, sing it. He did that. You know, I heard he had that. I always heard he had like. I know he retired like from public performance and stuff in '85 or whatever. But I always heard the story about how he had his little publishing company, his little office, like little storefront on Sunset. Was that true?
Heard that.
I heard he had his little publishing company set up on Sunset. You know, you can imagine. I bet that phone stayed ringing. I bet it's ringing even more now than it was when he was here.
Yeah, his daughter was in here recently doing recording some of his works.
Really?
But, you know, like that Grover Washington, Just the Two of Us. Yeah. That was after '85. He still did stuff. Just not with a label involved.
Right.
But that also makes him even more of an iconic artist. He's like, all right, I'm done. I did my thing. You know, I did a few records. They were great. Won 3 Grammys.
Man, that's crazy. And Ain't No Sunshine's like the most.
Oh.
I think, however, they add it all up. I think I was telling you this. It's arguably the most successful individual song in American history. That and like Summertime. The record's being broken every day now. Like, and a lot of times by some mediocre ass shit.
Miley Cyrus.
Now that's different. I think she's very good.
Broke every streaming record ever. I mean, digitally now it's completely different. I mean, if the Beatles had come out or Thriller had come out today.
But the thing is things are so, it's all so instant now. The real test is how it plays out 20 years from now.
Exactly.
And so like in the long run, and that's how I try to think about it, you know, is that everything needs to be immediate. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like I'm living in the now. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there's so much being made now and there's such a logjam on the river that the real test in our generation, it's always been the case, but there's just more content being created now and being exploited and leveraged and more people making a living at it than ever before. But and that's a great thing in a lot of ways. The downside of it is I do think a really high percentage of it will be forgotten. And that's nothing new. It's just the difference is how much more material is actually being put out there. And so that's why I say with like Bill Withers, I remember I was playing an open mic once, long time ago. And I remember this teenage girl got up on stage after me. And she was like, I want to play a song for you now that is so old that nobody even knows where it came from. And she goes into Ain't No Sunshine. And that's what's kind of interesting about Bill Withers. Everybody knows this song far beyond even realizing it's him, you know?
Yep.
And so it's like in a way, that's like the best thing that could ever happen to you.
Yeah, a lot of these album of the years, you know, those songs are complete shit. No one's listening to that 3 months later, let alone 3 years.
There's
30
not an
years.
American alive that can't hum along to Ain't No Sunshine.
Exactly.
They know it.
Yeah.
Use me. They know it. Lean on me. We know it. Everyone knows it.
Because it was different also. That's what Clarence Avant had, that intuition that this was different at that time.
Country soul, man.
Yeah.
Like folk. That's popular music.
It was real. It was authentic. The cover of Just As I Am is Bill standing in front of the factory he was working part-time at, and then he was also teaching downtown. Yeah, with the lunch pail. I mean, that was like him at the factory in Burbank, California.
Oh, that was Burbank?
Yeah.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
I wonder if that's still there. I mean, he's buried at Forest Lawn right down the street.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, right down the street.
Makes sense. I mean, they said, I remember reading there was like a big piece on him that had come out before he passed. You know, and he was talking about like eating in diners and like he'd be at a booth. I mean, it's Bill Withers, right? So he'd be like sitting at a booth by himself and there'd be like a table of older women, like, and you know, his name would come up. And he said he like showed up to the table and he was like, hey, I am Bill Withers. And they were like looking at him and they were like, you can't be Bill, you're too light skinned, you know, or whatever. And he was like, no, I'm me. You know, they didn't believe his ass, you know, but I heard he like went into the office like every day. until he died. And it was just like taking licensing calls.
Wow. I mean, can you imagine having the publishing on any of those songs?
Any of them.
Even Grandma's Hands. Yeah,
Woo.
it's been sampled so many times. Harlem.
Man.
It's just hit after hit after hit.
Yeah. Yeah, and then he's got this whole deeper part of his catalog that's not even really as well known.
There's 100,000 uploads to Spotify every day.
Is that what it is now?
Oh, it's incredible. 1 million a week. You know, in Bill Withers' day, there was effective filters, which were the A&Rs, the disc jockeys, and those guys really knew their shit.
Yeah.
Today, it's a free-for-all kind of.
It's a free-for-all.
And there's a lot of great art out there, though. A lot of great songs.
Sure.
You went through incredible ups and downs, and, you know, from going from a busker to where you are now, sitting in Studio 3 and being on late night television, you know, selling out big theaters, doing the Ryman, all these amazing things that, you know, an artist starting off or could have even been doing it for 10, 20 years now wants to get to. What would be one sentence, one piece of advice that you could relay to them? It's scary to think about that because you could also say, you know, don't give up. Well, what if they don't give up and it never happens? And they never, you know, have that moment. It's the power of manifestation, though. Also, I feel like, you know, Kyle or Audrey or these things happened to you because there was something inside of you that just kept you moving. And that's when your creator or the universe drops down little, you know, nuggets of fuel or some coin that you needed at the time or some direction or a friendship or relationship or a guitar, who knows what. Things magically happen. It's so funny, too, that you just said, you know, living the now. My father committed suicide, and he started a company a couple months right before he died, and it was called Living the Now. I actually have it tattooed on my arm.
Wow. Sorry for your loss.
Yeah, thank you. And as your sister, and you know, we've all went through loss, but it was funny that you just said that. But what would be something that you would, you know, there's a band that's 20 years old in Studio One tomorrow. You know, if they were big fans of Charley Crockett, what would you go over there and say to them?
When I started playing on the street, you know, even people that in my family really close to me, you know, they thought I lost my mind, you know, and maybe I did, because that's what I mean is like wasn't a career choice. It was like a career of last resort based on circumstances. Wow. You know, and people who cared about me obviously were really concerned for my mental well-being, which I understand. You know, you got a young man, you know, living hand in mouth, you know, relying on the kindness of strangers, you know, exchanging your experience at their back door for a plate of food or something, you know? I mean, that's not something your mama's gonna feel great about you doing. But when you talk about like people second guessing themselves, questioning if they're going the right way, it's like if people can easily understand what you're trying to do, it's probably not that original an idea. It's the confusion. That's what goes along with somebody doing something different. Mm-hmm. You know, just doing it different. And I don't know. I don't have advice really, but like when I was saying, you know, it's like when I was out of options, like Bob Marley talked about this kind of stuff a lot. Like, you know, if you're not living good, travel wide. Soul Rebel. You know, and you're hearing those Bob Marley songs when you're a kid, singing them, not even realize what he's talking about. You know, then I got older and started figuring it out. You know, my home is in my head. You know, he said that type of thing. And it was like when I was playing on those subway platforms, and I started out in the parks just to play. My mama got me a guitar. I'm 17 years old, and I was playing in a park because we lived in like a, you know, 500 square foot apartment or something. And I didn't want her to hear me. You know, there was like nowhere to go. So a public park that was empty was a good place to serve as a woodshed. And then I moved to better and better spots. I've never been doing anything but just trying to move to a better spot. And when I was on the subway platform, And against kind of my will, I kind of was pulled into the subway cars. You know, like I was saying earlier, more and more, I was just putting another dagger in the false image of me, the false version of me that society can turn you into, you know? And it's not even, you know, I'm talking about the slavery of our own device. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about the mental servitude that you put yourself in. With each step forward, you know, I put another dagger in that guy, you know? Wow. That's all I got, really, you know.
That's perfect. I love that. That
Othello
motivates
on the
me
range,
right now.
baby.
Yeah.
Othello on the range. I'm living out my own horse opera, Bubba.
And who you surround yourself with too, even, you know, not just even, if you're in your small town, you got to move somewhere to get more opportunity. But if you're around a bunch of people that are negative and bringing you down all day or trying to shoot down your ideas, you need to
that's a big deal.
Oh, huge.
You got to get away from people that tell you can't do it. It's not even you, man. They're just projecting on you. You can't do that. Yeah, that's really good advice. You got to get away from that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to stand around people that celebrate your wins. That's hard to find. Oh. It is really hard to find that.
Especially in this town, Hollywood. Oh, my gosh. Everybody's
Austin
just selfish.
Too.
What can I get out of you?
Yeah.
The world.
The world, yeah. You know, the selfishness of man or whatever.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sitting
mine,
down, man.
You're
such
so
a gentleman.
easy to talk to. You know, you look like it's weird. You know, you remind me of, oh, my man. Anybody ever tell you look like Steve McQueen?
No, but I take that.
You look like Steve McQueen, man.
What's the tour going down next? You're going to go out after this recording session for the summer, or you do like 100, 200 dates a year, right?
I used to do 200 dates, man. I'm I do 100 and I'll probably do 130 or something, 120. Wow. I don't know how many really, you know, to be honest with you, I don't even know. I don't know what I'm doing for my birthday. And I damn sure couldn't tell you what I'm doing the day after that.
We're gonna finish
it's good for me. I
today.
try not to really look and think about it much. You know?
Yeah, that's the one. That's living the now.
Yeah.
That's incredible. You got to appreciate every moment.
Yeah. It's better for me that way not to look at it. If I look at what I got going on this year, it might, you know, scare me.
We're all living on borrowed time. We just have today. You know, you can walk out here and who knows what's going to happen next. And it's like, live in the moment, appreciate it, maximize your day. You know, I said this to Abel right here, who's filming this. I said, the worst thing than wasted money is wasted time. You can never get it back. I want to enjoy this time. Charley Crockett, thank you again.
Pleasure's all mine, I'm sure. Got a wrap?
Yes, sir.
Shooter here?
That was special. I appreciate you.
I think I see him. Oh, man, me too, bro.